This is a KTVA 11 special report.
And good morning, I'm Lauren Maxwell. We are cutting into football this morning to bring you news after an officer was shot multiple times in downtown Anchorage in what police are calling an ambush. Now, the officer is expected to recover. The suspect is dead. Here's what we know so far. The officer was called to 5th and Cordova about 4:30 this morning on a report that a theft suspect was in that area on foot. Now, we're told that the officer was initiating a stop when the suspect walked up to the patrol car and started shooting. The officer was hit and returned fire. Another officer arrived as shots were being fired. That officer also shot at the suspect. The suspect died at the scene, and the injured officer was transported for emergency surgery and is expected to survive. We're going to take you now to a live press conference that is happening at APD headquarters, where we expect Chief Tolly is getting mic'd up at this moment to bring us a little bit more information. And again, what we know so far is there is an officer in the hospital this morning, and they were fired upon multiple times. They were responding to a theft suspect. The officer, we're told, is expected to survive, but the theft suspect died at the scene. And by the way, that scene was right around 5th and Cordova. It is still an active investigation going on there right now, so you are advised that if you need to drive in that area this morning, you should probably expect some delays. Again, the injured officer transported to the hospital for emergency surgery. He is expected to survive, and we are waiting for a live press conference. Should happen any moment at APD headquarters, where the chief is expected to fill us in with the very latest details. We'll bring you that. Again, just a reminder, this is still an active scene, and that is in the 5th and Cordova area. If you're headed downtown, you should expect some delays. And you can see right now the chief is getting mic'd up to bring us the very latest details. The good news, again, that officer is expected to survive, but we're hopeful that the chief will have a little bit more information. The suspect, who has not been identified, is deceased.
Everybody okay?
And identified as
Anybody
a male.
not?
So right now we're going to take you to
Okay.
the conference.
Good morning. Anchorage had a citizen who was ambushed today. The thing that made it very concerning is that citizen was a police officer. An officer was out on the streets in the early morning hours doing what we do each and every day and night. This officer was attempting to identify an individual that potentially involved in a theft. And almost immediately, the person who this officer came in contact with ambushed the officer. Totally surprised the officer. But because of the way the Anchorage Police Department trains their personnel, this officer took quick action, and almost immediately other officers arrived on the scene. And even though the officer was shot multiple times, officers returned fire and subdued the suspect. Once they got the suspect under control, our officers tried to save this individual's life. They were unsuccessful at it, and the individual died there at the scene. The officer's been taken to an area hospital, and surgery has already begun. The officer does not seem to have life-threatening wounds, but we know only too well that how things like this can turn, but our thoughts and prayers are with the officer. We're seeing this across our state. We're seeing this across our nation and around the world. I'm overwhelmed by the public's outreach to the police department. We are so grateful to the public and the citizens of Anchorage, in that they are doing their part by growing the police department and showing support for the police department. It is so critical that we get to the staffing levels to make the streets as safe as possible. Because ultimately that is the goal, is to make the streets and the citizens in Anchorage feel safe. I am very, very proud of the professionalism shown by not only the officers, but there's so much behind the scenes that takes place in a situation like this. As you can only imagine what the dispatchers were going through, trying to make sure that key assistance and help were dispatched as quickly as possible and to figure things out as quickly as possible. I'm so thankful for our support personnel and the crime scene and the detectives and everybody else that immediately was put into action and did just that. So the final message with this is that we are so grateful for this community and the community's support, and we really appreciate that. And I'm very, very proud of our officers and our unsworn personnel. I'll take a few questions if anybody has them.
Chief, what can you tell us about the officer wounded in terms of his background, his tenure?
We don't want to release too much information about the officer. As you can imagine, in a situation like this, we give that a few days for a number of reasons, to make sure that all family members are notified and that those notifications go out. Same with the suspect in this situation. We want to positively identify the individual, make sure those family members are properly notified. And when those details become available, we will get them out to you, which will be about 3 days.
Is there any indication that this was just a chance encounter between the suspect and the officer, or was there any pre-planning done on the part of the suspect?
I have watched the video from this situation. It was a clear and intentional ambush, but it'll take a while to sort through the information, conduct interviews of those involved and other potential witnesses, as well as collecting other evidence. And as we sort through those and the details become available, then we'll get those out to you. It wouldn't be fair to put too much information out there right now because we don't want witnesses to be swayed by the information that's put out there. Other questions?
Yeah. Sir, just a couple of days ago, there was a major discovery of 4 suspects involved in kidnapping and assault, and there was a huge amount of stolen material found on these persons' house. Is there a relation here? Why weren't they looking for a
Well,
4th person?
I don't know about any direct relation, but as we can see, that each one of these crimes, this started out as a theft investigation, and these thefts can sometimes escalate into more violent type situations where individuals think that they can use force and use deadly force at that to carry out what we have often considered as not a serious crime, theft and so on. So that's the tragic correlation between the two. Other questions?
Do we know anything about the suspect?
We are putting that information together, and we'll have that out in a few days.
It was nearly a week ago that, we saw a number of law enforcement come out to Fairbanks for Sergeant Alan Brandt's memorial service. Could you talk about morale within APD right now, just knowing that, we said goodbye to one officer just, not even a week ago?
This is only too similar in that not just here in Alaska, but like I referred to elsewhere in our nation, this is unfortunate that people want to choose that as a way of life. Just Thursday night, 2 nights ago, I was at an event for the Yay Inc., looking at our youth and young adults who are taking positive steps and actions in their community, helping one another and trying to set good examples for one another. And I was just so proud to be part of that our community takes those actions. Police can't do everything in the community, but we will be out there on the streets and trying to make it safer for those youth and those young adults, as well as every citizen in Anchorage.
Chief, any witnesses to this?
There are individuals that potentially saw things, and we are putting those together and conducting those interviews. Anything else? Once again, I want to thank Mayor Berkowitz for having the leadership and showing the importance of public safety in Anchorage and making that a #1 top priority for him, as well as all the citizens in Anchorage that have supported the police department in the same goal of making Anchorage safe. And above all, I am so proud of the men and women that make up the Anchorage Police Department. those in uniform, sworn and unsworn. It takes a whole team. It is amazing how professional they are. And I've been fortunate to see many, many departments over my years, my different assignments around the United States as well as other places in the world. And there's not many as great as this department. Anchorage is fortunate. Thank you very much.
All right, that is concluding a live press conference. That was Chief Chris Tolly bringing us the latest information about an Anchorage police officer shot multiple times this morning, and it looks like Mayor Ethan Berkowitz will be the next speaker, and he's preparing to get his microphone on now. Just a quick recap, that officer, it sounds like, is in surgery right now and is expected to survive.
So I think it's a reminder that when we hear sirens, somebody's heading into danger. And they're doing it to make sure that the entire community is safe. The response of the police department reflects a tremendous amount of not just professionalism, but courage. And in my conversations with officers subsequently, I am heartened by the camaraderie that exists. I'm also very grateful that we have a tremendous outpouring of community support and interest here in support of the officer and efforts to make Anchorage a much safer community. But at this particular moment, I want to extend my personal thanks to the officer and his family involved, who is currently receiving medical treatment, and the other officers who responded on the scene and did so with a degree of quick thinking and reflection of the training that they have that shows how important it is for us to continue to support our police department and do what we can to make this a safer community. Okay. Anything else? Thanks.
All right, Mayor Ethan Berkowitz at that live press conference that we're bringing you from APD headquarters. He follows, of course, Chief Chris Tolly that brings us the latest on an officer who was shot multiple times this morning. Just to bring you up to speed, that officer was shot at 5th and Cordova about 4:30 this morning by a theft suspect he was responding to. The officer is in surgery at this hour. He is expected to survive, but police say that the suspect was shot, presumably, and died at the scene. There were several officers apparently involved that responded quickly. Chief Tolly commended how quickly everyone in the police force acted. He had a lot of thanks for dispatchers as well, and a big thanks for the community, which he says also supports very strongly getting more officers on the bringing staffing levels up to where they need to be. Mayor Ethan Berkowitz echoing some of those sentiments, lots of thanks. And again, that happened down at 5th and Cordova. This is a shot right now. You can see that it's still an active investigation scene down there. So what we're being told is people should avoid the area if they can. Not clear how long that the road will be closed, but it is at this time. So that's something to know. If you're headed downtown, you should expect delays. 5th Avenue closed between Denali and Barrow Streets for that investigation. When we get more information, we'll bring it to you, and we'll have it on KTVA.com. That ends This Now.